A rich CEO slapped a single father in a cafe, but her bodyguard froze when he saw the scar on his hand. It was a regular Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the sky is gray, the wind has a bite to it, and everyone in the city is just trying to get through it. The coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Lakeview, a small, warm place called Greystone, was packed. It always was at this hour. Office workers grabbing their first cup, students hunched over laptops, a few older regulars reading newspapers the way people do not really do anymore. Daniel was standing near the counter. He was 38 years old, not particularly tall, wearing a plain gray jacket that had seen better days. He looked tired, the kind of tired that does not go away after one good night of sleep. He had just come off a 12-hour shift at the garage where he worked as a mechanic, and before that he had been up until midnight helping his 7-year-old daughter Lily with a school project about the solar system. He was not there for anything fancy, just a coffee, maybe a few minutes of quiet before picking Lily up from school. He got neither. The door to Greystone swung open like someone owned the whole street, and in a way, the woman who walked in probably felt like she did. Her name was Victoria Hale. If you followed business news, you knew the name. Founder of Hale Tech, one of the fastest-growing companies in the country, worth somewhere in the billions. She was in her early 40s, always dressed like she was about to attend something important, always moving like she had somewhere more significant to be. She walked in with 2 assistants practically jogging beside her, a PR manager talking in her ear, and a large, broad-shouldered man just behind them all, her head of security, who people at her company simply called Cole. Cole was different from the rest of them. He did not talk much, he just watched. He had the kind of eyes that were always slightly scanning the room, the way people do when they have spent years in places where you had to notice things before they happened. He was ex-military. He had the posture to prove it. Victoria went straight to the counter and told the young woman working there that she needed the corner booth cleared. The young woman blinked and said, very politely, that the booth was occupied. An elderly couple were having their breakfast there. Victoria did not raise her voice. She did not have to. She just looked at the girl with a certain kind of expression, the kind that said, "Figure it out," and turned away. That was when it happened. Daniel was turning from the counter, coffee in hand, trying to squeeze through the small gap between a display stand and a group of people. The cafe was crowded. He moved carefully, but Victoria stepped sideways at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe Daniel did. It is hard to say, and his elbow caught the side of her arm. The coffee tilted, the lid gave way, and a good portion of a very hot, very dark cup of coffee poured directly down the front of Victoria's white coat. The cafe went quiet, not all at once. It sort of rippled, person by person, until the whole room was holding its breath. Daniel looked at what had happened. His face went pale. He immediately started saying he was sorry, that it was an accident, that he would pay for the dry cleaning. Anything. The words tumbling out the way they do when you genuinely did not mean to do something and you know how bad it looks. Victoria looked down at her coat. Then she looked up at him. What came next, people in that cafe would talk about for a long time. She did not scream. She spoke quietly, and somehow that was worse. She said things like, "Do you have any idea who I am?" and "People like you should not even be in places like this," and a few other things that were designed, very deliberately, to make Daniel feel small. Like he was nothing. Like the accident was not just a mistake, but a reflection of everything he was. And then, with at least a dozen phones already slowly rising, she slapped him. Not hard enough to make him stumble, just hard enough to humiliate him. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. Daniel went completely still. He did not raise his hand. He did not raise his voice. He stood there with his jaw tight and his eyes level. And he looked at her the way a person looks at someone when they have already decided that reacting is beneath them. His hands, both of them, stayed at his sides. And after a long moment, he said quietly, "I hope your day gets better." That was it. That was all he said. There was something in those 5 words, and in the stillness of the man who said them, that made the room feel strange. Like everyone had just witnessed something they were not quite sure how to process. Cole was standing just behind Victoria when it happened. He had seen the spill. He had seen her reaction. He had worked for this woman for 6 years, and there were things about her he had long ago stopped questioning. He stepped forward, His job was to manage situations like this, to move her along before things escalated further. But then he looked at Daniel's hands, specifically the right one. There was a scar there, small, faded, shaped like a crescent moon, running along the side of the palm, just below the little finger. It was old. The skin around it had long since healed smooth. Most people would not even notice it. Cole noticed it. He stopped walking. His whole body just stopped. Because he knew that scar. He had last seen it 16 years ago, in the middle of a desert, in the dark, when the vehicle he was riding in caught fire after hitting a roadside bomb. He remembered the heat. He remembered not being able to move his legs. He remembered screaming. And he remembered two hands reaching in through the smoke and pulling him out. Hands that got badly burned in the process, on the right palm specifically, against a piece of twisted burning metal. He had never found out the full name of the man who pulled him out. It was chaotic. People got separated, transferred. He had spent years thinking about it, wondering. The unit chaplain had told him later that the soldier who saved him had gone back in a second time to pull out another man and had refused medical evacuation until everyone else had been seen to. By the time Cole was stable enough to ask questions, the man was gone. The scar in front of him was identical. Cole's voice, when it came out, was not his professional voice. It was something much older and much quieter. "Excuse me, that scar. Where did you get it?" Daniel looked at him. Something shifted in his eyes. A small flicker of something private, like a door opening just a crack. "A long time ago. Why? Were you in the service?" A pause. Then Daniel nodded slowly. Cole's throat moved. He looked at this man, this quiet, tired man in a worn gray jacket, who had just been slapped in front of strangers and had responded with nothing but dignity. And he felt something, that 6 years of standing silently behind a powerful woman had done a very good job of making him forget. He turned to Victoria. He did not raise his voice either. That seemed to be the thing about this story. The people with the real weight behind them never needed to. This man pulled me out of a burning vehicle. I would have died. He burned his hand doing it. He went back in after me and got someone else out too. And then he refused to be airlifted until the rest of the unit was safe. He paused. "I have worked for you for 6 years. I have respected your decisions even when I disagreed. But I need you to understand what just happened here. You slapped someone who saved my life. And probably a few others." Victoria said nothing. For the first time in a very long time, she appeared to have nothing to say. The cafe was so quiet, you could hear the rain picking up outside. A few people were still recording. Most had stopped, not because they had lost interest, but because something about the moment felt too real, too human, to reduce to a short video clip. Daniel looked at Cole for a long time. Then something in his face softened, just slightly. "You made it." It was not a question. It sounded more like relief. Like something he had wondered about and never expected to find an answer to. "I made it. Because of you." Daniel picked up his coffee cup from the counter. It was still half full, and held it in both hands for a moment. Then he nodded once. The way people nod when something long unsettled finally finds its place. And he walked out of the cafe. Victoria stood there for a while longer. She did not leave dramatically. She did not make a scene. She just stood there, looking at the door Daniel had walked through, with an expression on her face that nobody in that room had ever seen on her before. Something that looked a lot like shame. And underneath it, though she would never have admitted this out loud, something that looked a little like fear. Not the fear of consequences, the fear that comes when you suddenly see yourself clearly for a second, and you do not quite recognize the person you are looking at. The video went online before noon. By evening, it had been seen by millions of people. The comments were not kind to Victoria. Her company's reputation took a hit. There were calls for boycotts. Journalists wrote pieces with titles like, "Who is Victoria Hale really?" and "The True Cost of Power." But the part of the story that people kept coming back to, the part that got shared the most, that made strangers emotional in the comments section, was not the slap. It was the moment after. Cole's voice, Daniel's stillness. Two men recognizing each other across a room full of strangers, connected by something that no one else in the cafe could fully understand. A week later, Victoria showed up at Daniel's apartment. No assistants, no PR manager, just her, standing at the door in a plain coat. holding nothing. Daniel answered it with Lily on his hip, the little girl in her pajamas even though it was 4 in the afternoon, apparently in the middle of a very serious disagreement with her father about whether Saturday counted as a school night. Victoria looked at the child. Something moved across her face, quickly, like a shadow, and then she looked at Daniel. I am not good at this. I genuinely do not know how to do this properly, but I was wrong. What I did was wrong, not just the slap, all of it, the things I said, the way I spoke to you. It was wrong, and I am sorry. Daniel studied her for a long moment. Lily watched her with the unself-conscious curiosity of a 7-year-old who had not yet learned to pretend she was not staring. Then Daniel stepped back from the door. We are having pasta. It is nothing special. Victoria blinked. You do not have to. I know. Come in anyway. She did. Cole, for his part, quietly resigned from Victoria's security team the following month. Not in anger, he wrote her a professional letter that she later said was the kindest thing anyone had ever written to her, which perhaps said something about her life up to that point. He used a portion of his own savings to track down a hearing specialist for Lily, who had been sitting on a 6-month waiting list. He never told Daniel he had done it. The appointment letter just arrived in the mail one day, and Daniel sat at his kitchen table for a long time after reading it, not quite sure what to say or to whom. Daniel never gave a single interview about what happened. When reporters found him, he said the same thing every time, in different words, but always meaning the same thing. People have hard days, and what matters is what they do when the hard day is over. He meant it. That was the thing about Daniel. He always meant what he said. Victoria never quite went back to the person she was before that Tuesday morning in the rain. She did not transform overnight. Real life does not work like that, and anyone who tells you it does is selling something. But she moved a little differently after that, spoke a little more carefully, looked at people, ordinary, tired, unremarkable people, with something closer to curiosity than dismissal. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that is what change actually looks like. Most of the time. Not a thunderbolt. Just a woman standing in a coffee shop doorway, looking at the space where a quiet man used to be, and understanding, for the first time in a long time, that she had a great deal left to learn.